Hey Emma,
Yes, ma'am.
what do you call a rebellious cake decorator?
I don't know. What do you call them?
A frost punk. Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
See, I was gonna make a gauntlet joke, but I felt like they were all too obvious.
I feel like you should have said Frosting Punk as opposed to just like the name of the game.
Alright, you write the jokes.
Because it's still punny, but it's not. Doesn't feel like you're forcing it as much. You know.
The whole point of the pun, the more it feels like you're forcing it, the better the pun.
But you could also like Frostpunk could also be like, what do you call rebellious like cold front?
Well, that
You
was
know?
my original joke, but as we were hitting go on the microphones, I decided that it was too predictable.
Okay. Fine then.
Like, as it was going, I was like, oh, this is a lame joke. Frosting. And then,
Yeah, you should have stuck with Frosting though.
well, yeah, it didn't.
I am
Right.
Emma.
And I'm Madelyn. And we're here to dissect my opening joke for another 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Strap in. But for real, we're here with Talk This.
It's dangerous podcast alone.
Oh my gosh, we are not in sync today. To talk about video games, old and new, one of each, and then mash them up into a surely best-selling AAA game of the year.
Yep.
So this week, as you might have guessed, maybe if you haven't been groaning from the terrible joke this entire time, our games for this week are Gauntlet, the classic,
The classic.
and Frostpunk, which I had not heard of until I was researching it for the podcast.
Yeah. I didn't know. I couldn't tell last time, I feel like, when we were picking it. It's hard. You seem so expert about it.
I played it off. Those 4 years of acting training, sometimes they pay off.
Sometimes. Once in a while.
Once in a blue moon.
But as is tradition, we'll be starting with the old game. So, Gauntlet.
So Gauntlet is originally a 1985 arcade game. Literally for arcades. We don't talk about literal arcade games very often.
Yes, it was
on the
an
show.
Atari game.
Which was sold, as arcade games are, in cabinets.
Yeah. We went to the, there was an exhibit on video games at the Museum of the Moving Image one time when I was visiting in New York. And we played a little bit of Gauntlet. Or I did, rather.
We did. You did, didn't you?
Yeah. We found a couple of coins somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we bought them. We
We
bought a
bought
couple
coins and then all the games were not working.
Yeah, except for Gauntlet. Although it was much harder than the Gauntlet I remembered playing.
So Gauntlet is originally for the arcade. It was one of the first really major, actually intended to be multiplayer arcade games. Which was mostly, so I would love to talk about this through a modern lens, was mostly a ploy to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
They decided that for arcade games, players were not happy about having to pay 50 cents a game as opposed to 25 cents a game. Which, boy, does that feel familiar. And so they decided that a better way to get more money out of people while making it appear like they were paying the same amount was to introduce games like Gauntlet, which are 4 players, so you have 4 people putting in a coin at once.
Very smart of them, honestly.
No, it's a brilliant move. It's brilliant. Especially because, as we'll talk about, Gauntlet has no end.
Does Space Invaders have an end?
Well, I don't know. Actually, Pac-Man does because the code is broken.
Right.
I know that.
But I always, I've never really thought of, I guess some do. But I've never really thought of, arcade games, having an end.
Pac-Man has an end, Donkey Kong has an end, but I think both of those are due to, code overflow rather than an actual intended ending.
Yeah.
As far as I know. I don't know what happens to Galaga or Space Invaders or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
we're not good enough at those games to find out what happens.
Very few people are good enough at those games to find out what happens. But Gauntlet is designed to not have an end. I was reading about so there's all these levels, and we'll talk about the game in a minute. I'm just skipping ahead of myself because that's where I'm at today, apparently. But when you get to the quote-unquote end of Gauntlet, they just start turning the level designs vertical and horizontal. So there are just more forever.
I mean, hey, you get your quarter's worth if you're good at it, I guess.
Yeah. Gauntlet, if you haven't heard of it, I feel like it's a video game. Well, I don't know. I feel like it's a video game people have heard of, but I think that's just because I have heard of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a terrible standard to hold it up to. Has Madelyn heard of it? It's possible other people have.
But I've mostly heard of it because we played a version of it.
Yeah. Did you find out what version we had? I was looking at it and there was just like too many to...
I did.
Figure it out.
I did figure it out, mostly because I already remembered.
Oh, okay. Well, that helps.
So the original Gauntlet comes out in 1985. It's an arcade game, but now, of course, they've eventually ported various versions of Gauntlet to consoles. Mm-hmm. So we had Gauntlet Dark Legacy.
Was it really called that?
Yeah. Does me saying it that way not bring up memories?
It does, but I didn't know that was like the title.
Yeah.
I don't remember you saying like I remember the Dark Legacy part. I don't remember there being Gauntlet before that.
Well, it is a Gauntlet game. We had that one. That's the one I think we played the most. And man, I watched some gameplay from that game. And remember how last week I was talking about how, I don't think I'll ever have the experience of a game that was graphically so beautiful, I thought, when it came out, and looking back and being like, what is this crap? I did just sort of have that experience with Gauntlet. Not that I was, when Emma and I were playing this game, like, elementary school.
Yeah. I feel like, what does it look like? Am I remembering it correctly?
It's 3D.
Yeah. Is it, like, isometric?
What does that mean?
Like, you're looking at it from an angle?
Maybe?
Like, it's not side-scrolling, it's not top-down, it's, like,
in
between
it's that. Yes,
okay.
You're right. Yeah. And you're in the poison fields to start.
Sure.
Anyway, and...
There's a lot of green, I feel like.
Valkyrie is about to die.
Yes, I remember that one. Because I was always about to die.
Remember, don't shoot the food.
I don't remember that.
But all of these lines that I'm now saying are from Gauntlet games from time immemorial, aka since 1985. Even in the original Gauntlet, they say those kinds of lines. Mm-hmm. But they continue to port over into Dark Legacy, which was released originally for the arcade, believe it or not, in 2000, but then ported to the PlayStation in 2001.
Did it look different on the arcade?
I have no idea. I have not played it on the arcade.
It's curious. Curious about that.
Yeah. And it's by Midway Games, which I think also did the X-Men Legends series.
That makes sense. I sort of remember it being kind of looking like the X-Men Legend series.
Okay. I can't actually find it on Wikipedia that they did X-Men, but I really thought that they did.
They've done something, because they sound familiar. Did they do, like, Planescape? No, right?
No, they didn't. They seem to do a lot of NBA Jam. They do a lot of arcade games. Clearly, I was completely wrong. I really thought Midway Games seemed... Oh, wait, no. Selected console or PC games developed or licensed by Midway. Yo, this is such a tangent, but here we go.
It's important.
It is important. This is just selected, though, so I need to Google.
Oh, is it Mortal Kombat? Yeah.
Maybe.
It's Mortal Kombat.
It is Mortal Kombat. Oh, they do the X-Men. Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, back to the game at hand, now that we've talked about Midway Games for a while. So Emma and I played Gauntlet Dark Legacy a lot with Dad, because, of course, it's local co-op.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent game that does not hold up watching it now on YouTube, graphically, anyway. But I think that we also had Gauntlet 7 Sorrows.
Wow, that one does not sound familiar.
It also came out on the PlayStation in 2005. I remember that we had a second Gauntlet game that I don't think we liked as well as the first one.
I don't know.
We'll see. Maybe Dad will confirm. But I'm pretty sure we had more than one Gauntlet game. Dark Legacy is the one I remember with the most fondness, but I think that we had another one that we got eventually.
There's a lot of versions, so makes enough sense.
I was wondering if they had released any more recently, and there is one on the PS4.
Really?
Yeah, it's top down. I think it's more in it's a lot more similar to the arcade game.
Gauntlet Slayer Edition?
Yes, that.
That sounds great.
I mean, I was excited about it when I first saw it because I was like, oh man, Gauntlet was so fun when we played it on the PlayStation. It was a real introduction to that kind of RPG kind of deal, right? And I wish they made more games like this now.
Yeah.
I mean, they do, but they are online.
Yeah. Yeah, even saying what was it? The Valkyrie requires, what was it?
I didn't say that, but I think Valkyrie requires food is also a line.
But or what's the revive line that you said?
Valkyrie is about to die.
Yes, that one. It reminds me of in the Overwatch I need healin' meme. I don't play Overwatch, so I'm not sure, so I can't remember what character it is. Maybe Hanzo or Genji? One of those two? No, McCree? Maybe? One
just
of
keep
them
saying names.
I need healin'. Somebody out there knows what I'm talking about.
Nice.
Maybe. But yeah, those things that you say in online games when you require, you're about to die.
Yeah.
Basically.
This one is from the narrator.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is probably why I thought that this company had also developed X-Men, because it was, in the same spirit as Combo!
Yeah. I mean, it's also, local multiplayer, and I feel like they're also, little circles around your characters in Gauntlet, maybe.
Maybe.
You're the one who's watched it recently.
I wasn't paying attention to the little circles, okay? I don't know.
Fine. Whatever. But if you didn't notice little circles around them, they probably were not little circles. So maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, I probably just wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
I was mostly listening for the sounds. I wanted them to say the words. I remembered. That was mostly what I was looking for.
Well, you did it. You got it. I did.
Anyway, perhaps unsurprisingly, based on... Have we even described the game yet? I don't think we have. So it's a multiplayer arcade kind of fantasy hack and slash where you can play as the warrior, the wizard, the Valkyrie, and the elf. I thought it was the elf. I was like, the elf feels too similar to the wizard, but it's not. The elf. No. And you fight monsters in a dungeon, and they keep spawning until you kill the little bone things that they come from. And there's potions and food, and you put a lot of coins in.
And each character has their own specialty, too.
Exactly. Which is perhaps not surprising, given that this game is somebody's take, basically, on creating a video game version of Dungeons & Dragons for his son.
That makes sense.
Obvious, seems very inspired by that system. But cool that it's actually literally kind of based on that. It was originally going to have a different name until that name got, taken and they had to come up with something else.
I always imagine that, sucks when you're, making a game and you're getting there and you love the name and then all of a sudden, another game drops that has, the name you wanted or a name that's way too similar and you're like, oh, man. I wonder how often that happens. I feel like it probably happens more often.
That's why you have to trademark stuff right away.
I know. It's harder probably when you're an indie developer. I'm sure it doesn't really happen to AAA companies, but yeah.
The other tricky thing about Gauntlet, and this brings me into my looking at this from a modern lens perspective. So not only do you lose health when you get attacked by monsters, because, like, duh, but you also just lose health as time ticks on.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was playing it at the museum.
Which is diabolical.
It really is.
The way Gauntlet works also is when you die, you can just immediately insert a coin and come back to life.
Yeah.
Which is
cool.
When
you're playing with your buddies, especially, I feel like that's really, like, tempting, the peer pressure to keep playing.
Yeah. And it's cool because, the cool thing about it is that even if you're not very good at the game, if you have a bunch of quarters, you can still advance through it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, for an arcade game, that's kind of neat.
The birth of microtransactions.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, everybody's whining about it now, but it's always been there.
You're like, oh, these microtransactions are unheard of, and you know that they're just so youthful and naive.
Yeah. It's like, these have been around for a long time. Which was, like, the whole point of coming up with the game. Basically, they were like, let's get a game where 4 people can play, and they're literally putting in quarters constantly.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if it works, it works. Gotta make your money somehow.
Yeah. They only sold, I thought this was kind of funny to think about, they only sold about, 7,800 Gauntlet cabinets ever. Like,
that's a lot for arcade, though, isn't it?
Apparently not. So Pac-Man sold, like 100,000. But, of course, you don't need to have as many, like, no arcade really needs to have 2 Gauntlet cabinets.
Yeah.
And they were really concerned about, in developing it, I was reading, like, that people wouldn't want to play with strangers.
Uh-huh.
And the developer was like, it's fine. Like, it's fine. Just, like, get it out.
Like, the birth of online matchmaking.
Right?
Wow.
It's wild, sort of how many things this was really laying the groundwork for.
Yeah. Teaching that people will play with strangers. Some people. I would not be okay with playing with strangers, but that's me. Mm-hmm. And that people, if it's easy and there's pressure, they'll just keep putting money in that slot. In fact, this is probably easier than, like, nowadays where you have to, like, put your credit card in. Like, you could just, like, pull a cord out of your pocket and stick it in the machine. So easy.
Seriously.
They should really put, like, a coin slot on the, like, your PlayStation nowadays. Just go ahead and do it.
So, it's also, it's interesting to think about, because, video games now, it's like you don't buy a video game to make money on it, right? But it's interesting to think about, so I was reading about how much money people made off of Gauntlet, because it was a lot, right? Somebody made $4,500 in 9 days.
Over, like, for what?
Like an owner of the cabinet.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And it also won a bunch of awards, which is weird to think of video game awards as being a thing that happened in 1986.
Yeah.
But it did. It won a golden joystick.
Yeah.
And there's all these, like, reviews of it, too, which are pretty funny. Like, it was the number 14 greatest game available in 1991 in Entertainment Weekly. It's just, like, it's weird. It's weird to think about.
It's because you're so young and naive, man.
It's true. So, yeah, I mean, of course, there are many, many sequels to Gauntlet. I wish that they would bring it back in some kind of more fully realized way for the PS4. But if they did, it would almost certainly be some kind of online party thing, and that's no good. That's no good at all. In case you were wondering, according to Wikipedia anyway, the current world record holder for Gauntlet is a man named Russ Cool, which that can't be his real name, right? Who has a score of 5.1 million points. Russ Cool?
Could be.
No way.
You know his life.
Russ Cool? Mr. Cool? I don't believe it. But yeah, it's fascinating to see a game that, not only did we enjoy playing at a young age, but that it laid the groundwork for so many games to come, and that, frankly, I really wish would have some kind of a resurgence. Because I'm not good at the arcade version, because it's hard.
Yeah.
But I want a nice, easy version like Dark Legacy to come back.
I don't really remember playing Dark Legacy that much. I think the original Gauntlet is just, like, unfair. Like, there's a difference between being hard and being unfair, you know?
Yeah. No,
like, the design philosophy of the console versions are much different than the design philosophy of the arcade version.
It must be fascinating to be an arcade developer, right?
Well, to have been.
I'm sorry.
It's more accurate.
That's what I meant to say. It must be fascinating to have been an arcade developer, because it must be something, like, it's weird to think about, but there are whole teams at all these big companies, right, dedicated to coming up with devious new ways to insert microtransactions, right?
Yeah.
So it must have been wild to be that person at Atari.
Yeah.
It's to true. Be like, okay, cool idea for a game. How can we get people to put more quarters in?
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a whole bunch of leftover tokens from Barcade, so we should probably go when you visit next week.
Sure, I guess.
Play some Gauntlet.
Do they have Gauntlet there?
No idea.
We'll find out.
Almost certainly they don't, because I feel like I would have played it, but whatever. The last time I went to the arcade, I swear I gave myself, like, mini carpal tunnel, and it was scary.
Madelyn, you can't get that into it.
It was something, I was playing Space Invaders, or one of the Space Invaders clones that they had, and the button wasn't super great, so you had to kind of, like, slap your wrists to do it.
Madelyn, take care of your wrists.
Eventually, like, when I stopped, I was like, oh, like, this doesn't feel right. But yeah, bring back Gauntlet-like games for me to play alone in my apartment with friends that I definitely have.
Mm-hmm. That's why you said alone in your apartment.
Exactly. When I say alone, what I meant was with so many friends.
Uh-huh.
It could be a good one for the Switch.
That's what you just like everybody on Twitter right now.
It could be good for the Switch.
Yeah. Every single game. You know what would be good for the Switch? Every game that's ever been made.
But this one would be good because it's a multiplayer game, which is really what the Switch is designed for.
Yeah.
And the controls are pretty simple.
Yeah. Now they got Marvel Ultimate Alliance. That's basically Gauntlet.
That's true. It is. No, it's not. That Marvel Ultimate Alliance is so much more complicated than Gauntlet. Well, bring back Gauntlet 2019. Speaking of bringing things back from the dead, Frostpunk. I don't know.
We don't bring people back from the dead.
Not people. That's why I said
a lot of
things.
People.
Like civilization, like
okay.
culture.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I was like, yeah, there's lots of death in Frostpunk, but there's not really any zombies.
Reading about Frostpunk was depressing.
It is. It's a pretty depressing game. It's sort of like Papers, Please, except you're in charge. And also the world's over.
So not at all like that, then.
Well, in that you have to do like sort of menial stuff to upkeep something and make decisions that are bad for you or bad for your thing, but good for people or vice versa.
I mean, I have a much more obvious comparison to make.
Go ahead.
Civilization, but sad and hard.
Fair enough.
Reading about this made me think about what Civilization feels like when I'm playing on, like, Prince difficulty.
Is that the hardest difficulty?
No, I'm not very good at Civilization, Emma. It's like a 5 of 10 or something.
There are 10 difficulty levels? I wasn't even aware of Civilization had difficulty levels.
You're dumb.
I am.
Civilization difficulty levels. The lowest one is Settler, then it's Chieftain. Wait, I have it on Civ 5 here. It's coming up, but I can't remember. It's like Settler, Chieftain, Warlord. Oh, dang, I was right. Prince, King, Emperor, Immortal, Deity.
Well then. I
Yeah.
learned something new today. I hope you guys did too, listeners.
Uh, so it made me feel like what it feels like when I'm playing Civilization on Prince mode, and it's like too hard, and everyone is attacking me, and I don't know how they have this many soldiers, and
God, what
I'm
is it like
losing.
on Immortal?
I have no idea. We'll never try. Like my game's easy.
But yeah, that's a pretty good comparison. But Frostpunk is, rather than trying to conquer the world or go to the moon or whatever other endgame state is in Civilization, you're just
Yeah.
trying to expand your little settlement in a world that's been affected by global cooling, so it's snowing and everything, hence the frost in Frostpunk. Um, and yeah, so in order to do that, you have to like balance your people's happiness with the amount of work you need to get done, with like your fuel sources and reserves, with how much cold they can handle. So like you have to kind of make sure you have enough to have the greatest number of people alive and prioritize things based on what you need at the time. So that might be like you don't prioritize like burying your dead. You just like toss them somewhere, for instance.
But then the wife of the dead man comes to you begging to not have to walk by his corpse every day. And you
Yes,
say,
you read the
"Sorry."
Polygon article too.
I did.
Yeah, the unique thing about Frostpunk as opposed to like Civilization, and why I was thinking of it as like Papers, Please, is because like each of your people is like an actual sort of person who has like a personality and like relationships and are affected by things that you do.
Well,
Yeah.
it seemed like a cool game, except it's so depressing. Why would I ever play it and not Civilization?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a win state in Frostpunk, really.
I mean,
Like,
the
you're
win
just supposed
state
to
is
survive as long as possible until they, like, kick you out from being leader, essentially.
no. I think that there's, from what I was reading, it's like, it's roughly 12 hours the real campaign, quote unquote campaign, and then there's like the side DLC ones now.
But you don't, like, reach anything. You just survive as long as possible.
Yeah,
right?
you just survive to the end of the game.
Yeah. So it's not a matter of, like, feeling triumphant once you've done something. It's a matter of, like, oh, I made it.
Yeah. And that was a lot of the critique I was seeing in the reviews, is that, like, okay, so yeah, you've done all these, like, it's taught you a lesson about the horrible things you have to do to survive, but wouldn't it be interesting to then see the next steps of rebuilding a real culture?
Don't know if I agree with that. That seems outside the scope of the point, and also would make it into an entirely different game.
Well, I mean, but like I don't know, I thought it was an interesting idea of, okay, so then you have to, since maybe before you've been using all of these real totalitarian tactics because of desperation, how do you start to humanitize your rule when things, loosen a little?
I see the point. But then again, like, if you have that, then you can't have a time limit.
Yeah.
Because that just, like, makes it drag on as opposed to continually having a sense of tension. But I feel like if you give some sort of end state, then you're making a statement about, like, what is the ideal way to turn a dictatorship into a democracy or whatever.
Yeah.
Which seems to be sort of outside the scope of this game. And also not an answerable question, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, like, while it's a neat idea, it brings a lot of problems into the game design of, like, what's the end state here? You know?
Yeah.
It's like you have Frostpunk, you do 12 hours of Frostpunk, and then you open up a game of Civilization, basically.
Sort
That's
of.
what it feels like.
Except that Civilization is not it's just not sophisticated in the it's much more sophisticated in many other ways, but in terms of the kind of day-to-day decision making of this, it's like more, I don't know, that part of it where you have to like tell everyone where to go. I was like, oh, Asian mythology, but nothing like that at all.
But see, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, the part that they want added feels like Civilization as opposed to what this game is.
Well, who doesn't want Civilization added to all their stuff at all times?
Why are you... that's what I just said. I mean, I guess so, but then you just said no to that. So
I know,
you're literally just disagreeing with me for the sake
I know,
of
but I want like a middle ground part of it where, you know, you're starting to, you're like in between the two. Where you still are involved on a smaller level.
I mean, you would still have, if you were going to add this, I feel like you would still have to have the smaller level, but it would be such a different experience on top of it.
I know it would. I was just saying, I saw it in the reviews, I thought it was an interesting critique. It would certainly make the game less depressing, which is probably the point.
I don't know. At least it's interestingly depressing. Sometimes video games are depressing just for the sake of being depressing, or depressing because it loves man pain or something. But at least this is like depressing with like a point to the depression. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. We could feel like video games could stand to use like depressing games that are like depressing with a point as opposed to depressing to be artsy. I don't know.
No, that's fair. I think that is a fair critique of the industry.
Of course, I mostly play weird stuff. Weird, happy stuff. So who am I to really say anything?
Well, you buy games, so you have as much say as anybody else.
I haven't bought Frostpunk, though. So.
Fair enough. This company only makes, like, depressing games, though.
Yes, they also made this War of Mine, I saw.
Yeah. So, that seems to be their niche.
Well, you know, everybody's got to have something.
Seriously.
They're also, like, Scandinavian, so I think it's funny that it's all snowy.
Yeah. It's all they know.
It's literally everything in their lives. No, I've never been to Scandinavia. I don't actually know how snowy it is there. I just imagine that it's always covered in snow.
It's not, but it's okay.
Okay.
I don't know. It was interesting to me. I'm starting to become one of those people that's like, oh, it's a 12-hour game. Not long enough. But it's a tricky length for a game, I feel like.
It is, yeah. Because you can't do it all in one sitting.
Yeah.
But it also feels like something, like it's constantly happening when you're playing it. So it feels like it's also hard to find, like, this is where I'll stop on this run. But then again, it's only 12 hours if you make it that far.
Sure.
Right? So, like, a normal game might only take you, like, 4 hours, and then you fail.
Yeah,
so there is that to think about.
That is true. Still, though, it's in this weird middle ground, and I feel like this must be really, again, kind of tough as a developer, because, like, obviously, like, the graphics on this are, like, pretty beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a really well-realized, thought-through game with a lot going on, but also you can't really sell it as a full-price game.
I mean, you should be able to, because it's like Civilization in that way of you play each game differently, and there's also different scenarios. So while it's a 12-hour game, like, when you're looking at it, was it 12 hours for one, like, if you succeed through one thing, or is it 12 hours across all content?
I'm not totally sure, but what I was seeing in the reviews is people were saying that the replay value of this game was not as high as you would think it would be, because all of the, like, events happen in the same way.
I see.
So you can certainly try different strategies and stuff, and there's some replay value, but it's not like Civilization, where it really actually does play out quite differently each time.
But there are, like, 3 different scenarios, though.
Yeah, but there's a main scenario and some that are, the other ones are much shorter, apparently.
I see.
But yeah, there's one, the big one is like your people from London who have stumbled onto this heater and you're going to build a town around it. And then the other two are much more specialized, and now there's a DLC one, but are much more specialized. There's one that's like, you're in a city that is like trying to save a bunch of like seeds from plants, basically. Mm-hmm. And there's one where you're in a city that's getting a bunch of refugees and you have to decide what to do. So very interesting, but I think that those ones, from what I've read, are shorter. And more challenging, in many ways. Anyway, it is based, the sort of frosty global cooling thing is based on a real thing that happened as a result of a volcanic eruption around that time. Obviously not on that scale. We would know that. We would know about that if that had happened. But, yeah, there was some global cooling as a result of a big volcanic eruption, which is wild.
Fascinating.
This is the kind of game that I don't think I could play.
Why? It seems like just like your thing.
I know, it sounded really interesting, but as I've said like 20 times this episode, I don't like games that are hard.
That's fair, I guess, yeah.
So I'm worried that this game would just make me feel bad.
Like, I can't play it because I don't like Civilization or Stardew Valley or anything where there's, like, real-time stuff. Because I don't have the brain capacity for it, basically.
Ugh.
But it feels like it's your kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I was reading about it, and I was like, this sounds cool and ambitious. Too bad it's gonna make me feel bad. That's why there aren't more games that use sad as, like, a point to it, because it's really hard to get people to buy that game.
I guess so. I think there's a market for people who just like being depressed. There's a market for that.
You're right. But not, like, they don't like being depressed while feeling intellectually challenged, you know?
That's most people who are smart.
As soon as I said it, I was like, no, I'm wrong.
I'm pretty sure that's everybody who likes feeling depressed.
I know, but
I being intellectually challenged.
I just feel like it's hard to sell that as a video game. Like, here's a video game that's gonna make you realize that you're a bad person.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's really... Like, they did say in, like, their pitch I saw on Wikipedia, it was like, it'll make you realize something about yourself. They didn't say it'll make you feel like a bad person.
Well, it'll make you realize what you would be willing to do.
You know, and regardless of how Telltale turned out, the first Walking Dead did really well. So...
I guess I'm not worried that so much that it would make me feel like a bad person as it would make me realize that I'm bad at video games. Which is worse.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, are we ready to try to mash these two together?
Yeah, I guess so. We can sure try.
Okay.
Hard. Quarters. Make me the moolah.
Yes.
Hard. That's bullet point number 1. Quarters is / make me the moolah is bullet point number 2.
Thank you, because
at first that was confusing.
At first I put it together as hard quarters, and I was like, no. Is there another version?
Like cake quarters. Those are soft. Quarters of cheese.
Thanks, Em.
You're welcome.
I think it has to incorporate the multiplayer from Gauntlet.
Okay.
I feel like that's like the defining act. So it's like it's a 4-player arcade game where you're the oligarchs of a post-apocalyptic town.
Yes, you're the Council of 4.
Yeah. And
one of you has high magic. One of you has high defense. One of you moves quickly. No.
And you have to make decisions about various like policies, but you have to vote. And so it makes you realize not only that you're a bad person, but how much you hate your friends.
Well, maybe you could, like, lean into, like, the Dungeons and Dragons inspiration of Gauntlet and get a little bit of, like, role-playing elements. So, like, you're each, like, cast as, like, a person, right? And you have your roles and stuff. And then you sort of act that out within the virtual space of the city and have to make decisions where you vote on it. But you can talk to other players through the virtue of the internet. You have, like, a chat with each one where you try to, like, make bargains and alliances and
Yeah.
trade things back and forth so that when the vote comes up, you're, like, doing it.
Yeah. And so I think that
I feel like it would probably be, this one would be more fun to do it, like, with not your friends also. So
maybe, except that people are mean.
But see, that's the point.
Right, but I wouldn't... It's just dangerous. Any game that requires voice chat is, like, dangerous.
No, not voice chat. You could just be text chat. That's what I was kind of imagining.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I was like, I don't want voice chat.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't allow voice chat in my mashups.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so, like, the analogous to someone is good at hand-to-hand combat, someone's good at magic, someone walks fast, is that you all are, like, head of a different guild or something.
Yeah, you have priorities.
Yeah. And, like, areas where you have more influence or more votes or something than others.
Yeah.
But also your city is falling apart.
Yeah. That could be a fun sort of mixed sort of game experience.
Yeah. For the Switch.
No, it would probably be a PC game, like Frostpunk.
Oh, and I want there to be, like,
anything with any sort of, like, text chat element. I know you can, like, hook up a keyboard to your consoles. I don't know if you can to the Switch, honestly.
Yeah.
But, like, the PlayStation, you can hook up a keyboard.
Okay, but
it feels so weird.
I want a low-key local co-op version for the Switch.
Okay. But then, see, the virtue of the internet in this particular case, like, this is, like, a concept. Like, I wouldn't play this game ever. But, like, as the concept, is that you're anonymous from each other, and you can talk to just one person individually without having to be like, can we leave the room for a second?
But that's part of the charm of it, is you have to leave the room for a second so you miss stuff that's happening.
No, but, like, you literally miss stuff that's happening if you cannot see, like, who is leaving the room to talk to each other. If you know who's talking to each other, then that already gives you a leg up, an advantage.
I know. I realize that these are sort of two different, very close together.
Yeah, two different games.
I know that, but I'm intrigued by both.
Okay. I'm not clear on how a local co-op version would work at all. With, like, you could take out, like, the negotiating element, and it would work, kind of. But I don't know if it would be as, like, I don't know, experiential, I guess.
That's fair. It might not be. It's more of a party game in the local co-op Switch version.
Yeah.
It's like...
Break this out at parties. Can you stop your village from freezing to death?
People like, oh shoot, what's the bomb game?
Keep talking and nobody explodes?
People like that.
Yeah, but you don't see the people exploding from the bomb when you fail.
Okay, but
you know?
on the Switch, it's arcade style, so it's not going to be as gory.
Okay.
We're gonna make it up.
I don't think Frostpunk is really gory. You see, like, dead bodies, but it's not like there's, like, blood and viscera everywhere.
Regardless, it's arcade style on the Switch. It's an 8-bit.
It's an 8-bit?
Just kidding.
That would just be a little weird, I think.
It's pixel art on the Switch. It's, like, more inspired by the original Gauntlet.
Okay. I don't know if it would really be any less horrifying as pixel art than it is in tiny 3D models.
Well, you're the one who said people like to be depressed and intellectually stimulated.
Yeah, so... but not at a party.
Well,
I guess you could have an intellectual depressed party, but that seems more rare than just a gamer who likes to be depressed and intellectually challenged.
Fair enough.
A gamer who likes to be depressed and intellectually challenged isn't inviting a ton of people over to their parties, I feel like.
Well, it's like a game, it's like a trick, right? You just have to have one person who tricks their friends into playing. It's like playing Catan.
Oh, God. But then you hate that person.
Right, but people like playing Catan.
Not at parties.
Yes, they do. People have game
like, whatever,
nights,
have a nice board game night of, like, you know, you're like, oh, we have Catan. Oh, okay. But you don't, like, go to a party and you're like, hey, you know what would really liven up this party? A nice game of Settlers of Catan. Ayo. And then nobody's ever your friend again.
So you treat this game the same way as you would. You have, like, you know, whatever it's called. Frost Gauntlet Nights.
Frost Gauntlet Nights. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the negotiation could work if you were all in the same room. I mean, people do it in, like, tabletop RPGs all the time. You just have to act, I guess.
Yeah.
But then you would have to, like, I guess you would have to add some sort of, like, dice roll sort of thing, like in D&D. I don't know.
We're just moving it backwards and backwards more towards normal D&D. It's just like, it's D&D.
I know, but it's not like that in the online version. I was just trying to think of, like, how you'd make the local co-op version, like, fun. Like, it's, like with We Keep Talking Nobody Explodes, it's just 2 people, right? So, like, one person can be looking at the manual, one person can be looking at the screen. But when it's 4 people, and there's some level of interaction with each other, it gets more complicated to, like, forget what you yourself, the person, knows, but not what your character knows.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it needs to be beta tested. The online game is going to bring in so many microtransactions.
What are the microtransactions? That's actually important with the legacy of Gauntlet. What are the
dark
microtransactions?
legacy?
Yes, the Gauntlet's dark. It's literal dark legacy of microtransactions.
You can buy votes.
You can buy what?
Buy votes.
Votes. Oh, I thought you said books. I was like,
you can buy books.
Just to have?
Yeah, books.
No, the votes make more sense, I guess. So the richest friend wins, basically.
Pretty much.
And that teaches you a lesson about capitalist society.
Yeah. No, it's more the most impulsive friend.
That's true.
Or
Your friend who has no self-control. Which then teaches you a lesson about capitalist society.
The most competitive friend with some disposable income.
Which then
teach
you a lesson about capitalist society. There you go.
It's good. It's effective.
Use it in schools.
It's educational.
Please donate your money to our educational pursuits.
Well, I think we came up with one solid mashup and one that needs some time in development.
Both of these need some brainstorming time, I feel like. Just the local co-op version needs a little bit more than the online version.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We could release it afterwards. We could have it'd be like title casual or whatever.
Yeah.
Or title party edition.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. Yeah. Arcade.
Sure, arcade. I don't think that's really what arcade means, but we could use it anyway.
Doesn't matter. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in for this week's episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Since you're here and listening, hey, why don't you subscribe to us on the podcast platform of your choice? We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and Pandora coming soon. So, and pretty much anywhere that podcasts are downloaded. So, subscribe to us wherever you listen. Leave us a rating and a review if you feel so inclined. We love that stuff. And hey, follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and on YouTube as Talk This Sisters, and our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read our blog, including long-running series, Clickbait Boyfriend, and Split Screen, as well as various other stuff about us and about the show, and the games that are in the hat.
Did you say our social media?
I did.
Did you say YouTube?
I did.
Oh. It felt shorter than usual.
I just talked fast and efficient.
Okay. Well, speaking of games in the hat, since you didn't do the real transition, you just sort of left it there for me to pick up.
Whatever.
It's time to do that, to pick some new games for our episode in 2 weeks.
Woo.
So, our old game will be Braid.
Oh, cool.
And our new game will be Octopath Traveler.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Let's go. Let's do this. It's been a while.
Drop in, folks, for a 4-hour episode in 2 weeks.
In which Madelyn says nothing, and Emma just continues to talk on and on for 4 hours.
It's gonna be a great episode.
We never even talk about Braid.
Yeah. Or just like, Braid's a game. Anyway, Octopath Traveler.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, folks, tune in for One for the Record books in 2 weeks. And hey, tune in next week to catch a side quest episode of Talk This, where we talk about what we've been playing, some video gaming news, our question of the fortnight, the traffic report, and our off-topic corner.
You want to sign us off, Mel?
Yeah. I hope you have a week where you are confronted with no difficult decisions, and you only put in the quarters you want to put in.